Next time.
Gentlemen, thank you for having us before you this evening. By way of introduction, I just wanted to recap 2 minutes how we got here. I think we sat before you probably 18 months ago as we were preparing for a Springtown meeting in 2020 to talk about passing a motion to allow the library building committee to be formed and to start going forward with the library project. And at that time, we were unsuccessful in getting a positive vote at the town meeting, and I think one of the reasons why that occurred is the fact that there was concern on the part of some of the residents about the validity and the reality of receiving funds from the state. And that situation has been resolved because in July of this year we were awarded a provisional grant of $7.3 million with another $250,000 dependent upon lead certification and some of the things. So it's approximately 7.5, but for purposes of this presentation we've used 7.3 because that's the known commodity. That was the culmination of something that began back in 2014, 2015, when the board, as it was constituted at that time, and the residents of the town voted that the Library Facilities Committee be formed and submit a grant application to the state. So at that time, again, 7-8 years ago, the town supported the idea of building a new library. Fast forward to now, we've got the funds awarded to us, and I say it's formally referred to as a provisional grant because it's provisional for the town accepting the money and to make sure that the town is going to pony up the remainder of the funds required to build the facility. You asked a very good question around that time and then a couple times since, and we've been talking with both Sean and Justin about, well, what are the options available to us and what is the financial implication? Because as I've said a couple of times in the past, as trustees, we're elected officials, we also have a fiduciary responsibility to do something that is in the best economic interest of the town. And so what we did was to take a look at 3 options. We looked at a repair option, we looked at a renovation option, and then we looked at the rebuild/build option. And that's what Kate has been looking at over the course of the last 3 months with architects, OPMs, DPW, experts that know library construction in the Commonwealth. And that's what she's prepared to talk about in the next few slides, just so you can see what the financial comparison is. Because I think the belief that the town needs a library, I'm hopeful that that's a given. So let's talk about money rather than the soft stuff.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. Sorry. So repair, renovate, rebuild. The first scenario is repair. We want to thank you again for touring the building this evening. So repair would fix those issues that you saw during your tour. So rooftop HVAC improvements, replace the exterior siding, window and door replacement and window coverings, because if we put windows in, we need shades on them. Ceiling replacement, both public and staff restroom upgrade. As you noted, our staff restroom is not handicapped accessible. Replace flooring throughout the building. We have a staff kitchen. There's also a small kitchenette in the sprinkler room, which you did not see off the meeting room. That's unusable. So it would be upgrading both of those. New presentation systems in our community room and the small Sullivan meeting room /office /local history room that you toured this evening. An ADA compliance upgrade and an upgrade of our fire suppression and security systems. What is not included are foundation repairs, as if You've read the grant application, as you recall. There was a geotechnical study done, and it was discovered that the southwest corner of the foundation, the footing is cracked. That's the settling, the 3-inch settling we discussed when you were touring. And apparently that was discovered when the cap was being put on the landfill and the excavation was done up to the building. So that's a number we don't know the repair of. We know that there's non-engineered landfill debris, I believe the report called it, under the building, AKA trash from the landfill, that was apparently not taken out when the building was constructed. So that number is unknown. What this does not include is any upgrades to furnishings, lighting, and our lighting is quite poor for a library. It's very difficult in some of the stacks to actually read the author's name on the title of the book. Or restructuring of any of the existing workspaces, public spaces, entryways, landscaping, or driveways. The reason I say entryways, as I mentioned during our tour, our families and our older patrons, our elderly patrons, it's quite a long walk in the wintertime from the parking lot around the front of the building. It's an icy walkway. Staff, DPW starts us off at the beginning of the day, great, when we've had ice and snow, but staff repeatedly goes out to put ice melt down because it's a long walk and it gets very slippery and it's shadowed by the hedges are there. The hedges are needed because we have little ones who run out those doors and we need a barrier between the front of the building and the street. Our driveway really is a bit problematic in that we had a drive-up book drop, and our patrons loved that. They really loved that. Unfortunately, it was hit twice, and book drops are expensive to replace. So we moved it to the side of the building, much to the chagrin of our patrons. So the total for repair of what you see, or what you saw on your tour, is approximately $3 million. We can talk about renovating, construction costs for renovating. Our architect and OPM came up with a number about $7.5 million for that. There'd be additional costs for professional services, landscape and painting, miscellaneous costs, because depending on the amount of renovation that could be done, the library would have to move into a temporary facility. So we have moving costs associated with that. We then have leasing costs of light industrial or light office or light industrial space. And depending on the space available, we either can move everything or we move a small collection and something goes into storage as a cost to that as well. What this does not include is really anything as far as increasing our space. We might be able to work around changing some of the interior partition walls, but we're not going to gain space. And as you saw during your tour, we're very limited on space for programming. Public spaces, we have filled them to capacity and still leaving room for wheelchairs to get through and people to congregate, but we have noise issues. So the estimate for renovation is about just under $12.5 million. Anything you want to add to that?
No.
Our rebuilding costs, as everyone knows, costs have gone up, and I'm sorry, I don't know why that reformatted on me. We were at 19.6 a year and a half ago. We are now at 24.5 million. When you take away the $7.3 million grant from the state, the anticipated cost to the town is $17.2 million. So the rebuild demolishes our existing 14,000 square foot structure and replaces it with a 23,000 square foot two-story structure on the existing footprint. Just a reminder, because of the capped landfill, we have to use the existing footprint. We can't go out. If we come out towards the street, that's where our septic is. So we're talking about rebuilding on the existing footprint. So just a basic recap, repair is just under $3 million. we remain at 14.7 thousand square feet. Renovate is just under 12.5. We don't gain any square footage. Rebuild is 17.9 cost to the town, but we have 23,000 square feet in that.
Could you back up a couple slides? Because it looks like the OPM, architectural fees, engineering fees are the same for a rebuild and a renovate.
Yeah, I did not hear back from our OPM or our architect in time that could be prorated down depending on the amount of work they have to do.
Yeah, that, it just seems,
I had to use the numbers I
Proportionally,
had from the grant because I didn't know.
okay. That seems proportionally high,
Yeah,
disproportionately high.
that could be prorated down.
It's probably half that.
So, you've got the three options shown with the three different cost levels, and as Kate pointed out, the first two do nothing to alleviate the space constraints that exist at the library. It does nothing to satisfy what was identified by residents of the town as a need of the library. And by going for essentially an additional, and even if we adjusted, Dave, for the.
It's 11
you
million,
pointed out,
yeah.
the 11 million, that means that the difference between fixing the existing space and adding 8,300 square feet is $6 million. So that's the net increase of putting a new building up as opposed to renovating the existing building. And to go back to the things that Kate said, the $3 million estimate that she showed still doesn't have a lot of other costs that should be in there, because we simply don't know what it's going to cost to do anything with the foundation or some of the other things that you pointed out. So, and finally, the first two things, if we do either one of those, we will be back here within the next 5 years. Because to assume that we're going to be able to renovate a building and have it last for 20 or 25 or 30 years, and maybe we could say that that can equate to what's going to happen with a brand new building, but the brand new building is going to be built, as this one was, to last for, we aim for 30, but we've gotten 42 right now, and that's how the new one would be built as well.
And I think it's just important for everybody at home to know that the dollar values on the screen right now are today's dollars. No matter what option, what path we take, those aren't going to be the dollars that are actually going to be spent, because time equals money. So, I mean, it's not like you can pull the trigger tomorrow and sign contracts for a repair, for a renovate, or for a rebuild. So by the time all of this is done and ready to go, we're looking to be a year and change from now. So those dollar values would also potentially increase for each one.
Yeah.
With any project, that's
Yep.
going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah. We do have escalation.
Any questions?
On the rebuild, there is escalation.
There is escalation included in the rebuild.
Oh, so your rebuild right now has escalation through when?
I
for-
want to say a year to 18 months, because it's usually from the time the contract is executed till shovel in the ground, I believe. I could check that, but I don't know off the top of my head. It's a minimum of a year, that I know.
But renovate and,
Those were today's dollars, as Dave said. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Ann, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman. if I could.
Mr. Healy.
So, looking at the renovate part, right, you were just like, pretty much giving the building a facelift, for the most part.
Right.
Was there any discussion about adding some of the features that you would be looking for in a brand-new building into the renovation project?
Yes, that was moving some of the interior walls.
Yep, all right, so
reconfiguring
I guess I'll go
some
one step further,
spaces.
looking at maybe putting a portion of the second floor on, not everything that you were looking for, not getting all the way to the 23,000 square feet, but maybe getting in the area of 19,000 square feet. Was there any discussion about that?
That was done back in the engineering report that was included with the grant in 2016. And the engineering report at the time said, yes, it could be done, but everything that had to be done to the building to maintain the load of the second floor, because we're a library, books are heavy.
Yep.
That it wasn't economically feasible. It was more viable to tear down and rebuild.
Okay,
And I did find the section in the report, Dave, we'll be happy to get you a copy of it.
Perfect.
It shows that, where they did look at that as an option.
Okay.
But it just didn't make sense at the time.
Okay. And then the other question I have, the $7.3 million you guys have been awarded, okay? Is that just for a new constructed building?
Yes.
Just for a brand-new constructed building?
Brand new.
Yeah.
It will not apply to like a renovation? Or so like the numbers that are up here, if the direction was to renovate it, the town's looking at a $12 million project?
Yes.
With no reimbursement, no
Correct.
assistance or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay. that was my own edification. I-
And the other thing is to add on to that, or, to pile on, if you want to use a football term, rebuild is the plan that was put in. If we make a change to that.
Okay. So the grant was specifically written for a rebuild?
Specifically for rebuild in the design that was submitted.
Okay,
If we change the design that was submitted, you lose the $7 million as well.
Right.
okay.
So
So could the
we can make
grant,
small changes, like move a wall here and
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
We cannot reduce square footage, we lose the grant.
okay, so if the grant was written just for a rebuild, would you still be open to receive money? Or is that not an option underneath the grant program?
I don't understand the question.
If you wrote the grant to renovate the building, would the state, is that part of the state's program is what I'm asking? Or is a grant program just for new construction?
It can be for both, but that was not what was applied for.
That was not what was applied for,
So
okay,
that can't happen.
okay.
Yeah.
And the other.
I'm just trying to get clarification
No,
of
I
the grant
understand.
process itself.
Yeah.
If you can only put in for this grant, if you're actually gonna build a brand-new library. Or if you were gonna renovate a library, you would have to put in the grant that way.
Yes.
Correct.
You're gonna renovate your existing library, and this is what you're gonna do, okay.
Right.
And the
Thank
other
you.
thing that we've said in the past is the fact that these grant rounds only come around
Okay.
every 10 years.
Yeah, they're-
So we're not going to see another one of these things as an opportunity probably until 2025, 2026. And then you're looking at another 5 years before you'd get everything from a wait list. And that's to assume that if we did turn this down and we go for another thing, that the library commissioners are going to look at us with any kind of seriousness. Because now that'd be the third time to the well, and they're saying, oh, sure, Seekonk, you'll be here, just like you were the last 2 times, and then we'd be number 74 on a list of 73.
Right.
I think it's also important, because of COVID and how it's affected the construction program that the MBLC runs, they are redoing their program because they don't want libraries to be in the situation that those of us who were down the wait list are now in. Costs have risen since the original grant application was put in. Nobody wants to be in this position. But we need to follow through because we're offered $7.3 million.
Yeah.
When they do reopen the program, it's irregular, as Mike said, we don't know when that would be. Typically, they accept every library that applies as long as their application is sufficient. And if you can see the binder over there, there's a lot of work that goes into that. They're not doing that anymore. They will not accept every library that applies. They're going to accept a certain number. They have the funding, but they're not going to do the lengthy wait list because this could happen again.
Oh, I thought you were gonna have some good news at the end of that and say they were revisiting it in a
No.
better way, so that way.
Well, they're revamping.
So they
the
can
program.
they can match the increased construction costs, so instead of giving us $7
Right,
million, give us
right.
$9 million.
I mean,
Is that where you're going?
Yes, that was where I was going.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mr. Petronio?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So the big elephant in the room to me is the foundation and the repair part, which is an unidentified cost.
Right.
And so if we do either of the repair and renovate options, we still have a large unknown in the foundation,
Right.
because regardless of what decision is made, that's got to be addressed. When it comes to the renovate dollars, does the renovate include all of the, well, does it replace a lot of the repair things
Yes,
as well
the-
in kind?
Thank you
Okay,
for
all right.
mentioning that. I neglected to point out in the fine print on the renovate slide, it did say repairs as included on the previous slide, and then the rest.
And
that
then the
followed.
okay,
Yes.
that's, I wanted to make sure that that was, I assumed it was escalation,
Right.
but I didn't hear that when I was listening. Okay. All right. But
But
that foundation to me is a big concern moving forward in this project.
Okay.
And when they do the rebuild, you said the same footprint. Is it going to be moved over to address it so that future building doesn't have the same exact
Yeah,
issue?
when I say rebuild, it's a complete demolish.
They
and start
demolish
over.
and slightly moved over so it doesn't have that, yeah.
No.
Well,
No.
they would fix what's.
They would fix that
underneath.
underground
Yeah.
underlayment in order to, okay, all right. I just want to make sure. That was implied, but I'm just,
Sure.
Yep.
yeah, okay.
No, good question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, so we're here answering your questions.
Yep,
What will, our ask, and not for an answer tonight, but our ask is that we can get the majority or all of you behind the project, because then we think going to town meeting, we've got a little more ammunition on our side if we have the executive branch of town saying, yeah, this is something that should be done. And as I said, I'm not looking for an answer now, but I just want you to consider that. The town thinks, the townspeople think, we think it's the right move to make. And financially speaking, it's the right move to make, because to pick up an additional $9,000 for the $6 million additional dollars, plus the amount of time that that building will last, and will be able to service the needs of the town, is very important.
Can, I'm
all
sorry.
right. So
Let-
Go ahead.
I had one final observation, especially when it comes to the grant and the rebuild cost. I don't know the answer to this, Sean, maybe you do. I know in the grant process, most grants are, you bond for the money first, and then the grant money comes in to help pay, but you're basically on the hook for the full amount on that bond, correct?
Yeah, so town meeting would have to authorize the full amount, so not the 17, but the 24.
But the
and change.
24 and
Right.
change, okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that's clear. So whatever's decided, that's going to be part of the, if we decide it's debt exclusion, the 2.5, it's going to be part of that.
Correct.
So it's going to be regardless, and even if we get the grant money, that's just going to go into our budget to, how does that get dispersed? Like,
Yeah.
does it immediately go against the grant and reduce,
Yeah,
go
so-
against the bond and reduce it, or?
Yeah, so the way the town warrant would be written is that any funds coming in would have to go directly to the reduction of the.
Reduction of the
cost.
bond, okay, all right,
Right.
all right.
And to be clear, the total grant amount does not come in at once, as it comes in as benchmarks are hit
Yep,
during
yep.
construction.
Like a construction
It's
loan.
typically
And as it
completely
comes in,
paid out
it'll
in
go
5
off
years.
against that
Yeah.
bond
Right.
rate, and then it would decrease our bond debt, okay, all right, that's fine,
Yeah,
yeah.
and not
Figure out the
to
order
keep
of
those those waiting in suspense at home, but this board is going to be having discussion with regards to this project and other capital projects at, if not the next meeting, it'll be the following, but walking into town meeting, people will know where this board stands on this project as well as others, and where we have, because as you know, we have an extensive capital
Yep.
project list, that we're all evaluating and discussing and trying to prioritize and think about where things are. So, right now, it's tentatively on the schedule for the next meeting. So, stay tuned.
Okay?
Yeah.
So what,
When does this money disappear?
January 9th.
That's one of the things that we obviously have concerns about, because town meeting leads into a referendum. We want to make sure that we have a referendum, assuming we have a positive result at town meeting, that gives us plenty of time to have it passed, as opposed to meeting on, having an election on January 6th, for instance.
Okay. That answers
So-
my question.
so I think
go to you
for me,
next.
one of the difficulties that I'm having right now, and Mike, you can, I think, attest to this. When we were initially going through this, I had suggested a couple times to look at second floor. Could we do it and move public upstairs instead of having the books down upstairs to reduce weight and everything else? But at that time, I think the cost that we were looking at the rebuild was about $15 million.
Yeah, 15, 16.
If I'm not incorrect, it was roughly around 15 million.
Yeah.
But repair or renovate, and this is where it's unfortunate, the cost to repair the library at the time would have probably still been around $2 million, right? Renovation back then probably would have been around, I would say about $9 million, right? So looking at best bang for the buck scenario, where you're getting a 50% almost reimbursement on the overall cost of the library, made it a real easy one at the time for during our discussions at least to say, yeah, fine, you're going to get $7.5 million and spend $7.5–8 million. The problem that I'm wrestling with right now is the disproportionate reimbursement, right? Like, it's no longer a 50-50 split or a 45-55 split. Now we're looking at a 30-70 split, roughly, right? Or,
It'll get worse with time.
and I think that's some of, huh?
It's only gonna get worse with time.
And it's only gonna get
You're-
worse
you're
with time,
absolutely
right?
correct, yeah.
So, and I think that's the difficulty now with everything that we have on the plate of trying to juggle and see how to make it fit and work.
Understand. The thing I think that is true about what you say is the fact that the percentage of reimbursement that comes from the state has obviously dropped.
Yeah.
The other side of that coin is there still is reimbursement.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know the funding of the other projects, but I don't think there's $7 million sitting out there for other projects. So it's a much larger number that's going to be for those other things that are there. And I think for the town, obviously I've got personal feelings about it. I think for the town to simply say we're giving up $7.3 million because of whatever the reasons, that's I think going to be difficult for you to say to townspeople that we don't want that money that the people of the town have paid into the state through taxes, and now it's not going to come back.
Well, I think that's the thing that we want to hear from the people, right? Is that, and I think that's what
Right.
we heard at the last time was, because there was again that difference in the disproportionate return from the state reimbursement compared to the initial cost from 2014-15, and we're in that same situation, if not a little bit worse. I don't know if it was fully attributed to that, like you mentioned earlier. I think for some people it may have been.
Right. But I think there was a, again, from my perspective, it was misplaced skepticism that the state was even going to give us the money.
Could be.
Okay, so we called your bluff. They gave us the money.
Yep.
Oh, we have it, so go ahead.
What do you want to do?
Throw something else at it.
What do you want to do?
That's right, that's what it is. And as I said, the town said 8 years ago, we want to go forward with this project. And I'm not saying we can't change our mind, obviously, change your mind about everything every day of the week. But the town said, after reasoned study, that this is something the town wanted to go after. Okay, here it is. It's unfortunate that COVID was there, as Kate said, it's unfortunate. And by the way, we're not, and I know you know this, but I have to say it anyway for residents who might be watching, we're not alone in this.
Mm-hmm.
There are 7 libraries who received funding from the state. I think the average cost increase is something like 40 to 50% for every one of those projects. Everybody's seeing this. Yeah, so we just have to, you're right, we have to make the decision, the town has to make the decision. And we obviously are hoping that you'll go positive on it.
Mr. Zor?
I got so are you able to change anything as far as the curb appearance or stuff with the building without structurally, like, so for instance, for the Aiken School building project, I brought up, they wanted ceiling to floor windows. I said, that's way too much windows, we were able to shave it down, put a lot of brick and mortar there, and it saved a couple $100,000 right off the bat. So I remember your proposals were basically sealing the floor glass. Are you able to put more brick and mortar to bring down the cost, maybe save $1 million in glass? Stuff like that?
So,
We're not at final design, so.
Right.
No, but you
that
can
has to
change
be
that,
worked out.
that aspect, 'cause it's
Yeah.
not, to save, to cut costs somehow, like your back
Yeah.
wall, if you're looking at the library, the right side, make that a solid wall instead of glass, because you'll be looking at those people's houses.
Well, I would,
Um,
that is a solid wall, because I know that, because that's where the staff space is planned to be
Okay.
located.
Trying to remember
Where the glass was along the back overlooking the meadows.
I thought it was on the, trying to remember.
I mean,
what
there
the
were
thing- I
windows
remember there
all
was-
around to
there was a
allow
lot of
natural
glass
light
there,
in,
so.
but the majority of them were along the back to open up the view of the meadows to the public.
So, but I think there's a problem with the question that you're asking, Chris, right? So, well, the initial question, can it be value engineered? Yes.
Yes.
However, the the request to town meeting would have to be for the full dollar amount. It couldn't be for
Right.
less.
I get it. but they
In
can
the
make-
hopes of value
They
engineering.
could do other
Right.
stuff that would bring down the cost, I'm saying.
After the
Like
fact.
buildings.
After
That's
the
what I'm
After the
trying-
fact.
Yep.
Just a question, so you made mention that all these other communities that got approved and awarded the grants and are undergoing the same discussions and issues that we are now. I'm guessing there's probably been some feedback back to was it the MBLC, right? And saying, hey, these are some serious challenges now that we're facing because what was once great ain't so great.
Right.
Right? What's been the response back from that commission in terms of you guys saying, it is what it is, or there's no,
There-
are they examining, I guess, with ARPA funds, right? Are they examining ways of utilizing it to help the communities that they've delayed or that are facing these extraordinary issues, right? Are they trying to find ways that maybe further assist this program?
So the MBLC's hands are tied. They are subject to regulatory things from the legislature. They have a certain amount of money from the legislature, that's what they parse out. However, we do know that there's a surplus in the state budget. We do know that there's, I want to say, $2.2 billion in ARPA funds available that have not been dispersed yet. So the 7 libraries on the list, as well as some below us on the wait list, have banded together and are approaching our state reps and senators to do something and get us some money. That's not a given.
Right.
We're not going to come to you and say,
Right.
that's guaranteed. We told you that the grant was guaranteed and people didn't believe us, so I'm not going to stand here and say something is guaranteed when it's not. However, Mike and I met with Senator Feeney the other day. Senator Feeney is prepared to back us. He has to work within the constraints of the process, and it's a process. So it could happen in October, November. It might not happen till January. It may not happen at all. But I know that Senator Feeney, the Select Board in Deerfield, and some of the other communities are reaching out to their state reps.
And that probably would
good
be
to know.
another thing that
Yeah.
would be good
It's good to know.
for this board to do, to add your voice to those of the other communities that have done it, to say, hey, this is something that we think is a good use of ARPA funds, because the bulk of the increase was driven by what happened during COVID. So therefore, if you can think of a good way to assign funds that are supposed to be for COVID-related cost increases, this is one of them.
Are there any other
We could
questions?
easily send a letter.
I think
Make a
it's good, no, I
motion.
think it's good information that you shared with us about that, that you're seeking that out.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Granted, I understand it's not guaranteed, nothing's guaranteed in this world other than taxes and death, so I get that, which I just applaud you for actually reaching out, and I think as a board, to your point, Mr. Andre, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but you can gladly go ahead
I
and
was
say
just
what you're
gonna
gonna
say, why don't we
say.
make a motion tonight to go ahead and put together a letter and request that, just in the hopes, right, in the hopes that we can, I mean, again,
Well,
I can
sounds
say
like-
today easily, I have no problem supporting this project if we're back in the same 50-50 kind of mix, right? Without any further discussion. It's my same thinking of, what was it now, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it was, would still apply, right? Why are you gonna spend $12 million to renovate if you're gonna spend $12 million and get a brand-new building? right? Because that's exactly what a 50-50 split would come out to. So that's why I have no problem saying tonight, if we can send in a letter to further
Well, I have
reinforce in the
drafted a
hopes that
letter.
something could get done. I doubt it will, but.
I've drafted a letter, I'd be happy to give you a copy of it.
Sean would appreciate it.
No, I had already sent it over to you guys.
I didn't see it.
It was, it was like last week.
Oh, from,
Check your email, gentlemen.
Yeah.
So I would be all for us drafting a letter to appropriate. We want to do, well, it sounds like Senator Feedy's involved, so for Representative Collins.
And Senator Cabral, Pacheco, sorry.
Yeah.
Chico, right, because he's gonna be the new one, correct?
Yeah.
Senator Rodriguez is the chair of the library caucus, I want to say, in the legislature, and he's a strong library supporter, so I haven't spoken to him, but we're confident that he will back him. Yes,
Okay.
he's waiting.
He's also head of Ways and Means on the Senate side.
Which
So-
is, yeah, so that's important, yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I guess since we have the library, is there any other questions with regards to the project, the repair, the renovate, rebuild? And then we'll go back to Mr. Andrade here and take care of his motion, because I'm sure there's support for that, so. But since we have the library folks here, does anybody have anything else for Kate and Mr. Durkee?
So we're putting on this town meeting or the special or?
Well, we'll have to do it.
I guess that's a separate question, I think, for the library board, because I believe I've been seeing some petitions going around, for a potential town meeting here. So I guess we might as well, since I just mentioned here, what's the general feeling from your board in terms of, are you looking at going on town meeting, or are you looking for a special town meeting? I know that as you put it out there, you were collecting petition signatures, so.
We are leaning very strongly toward the special.
Special.
You're right, we were looking for signatures. I think last count was close to 500.
It's approaching 650.
It's approaching 650 now.
Okay.
To have a special town meeting. So within the next day or so, we'll submit something to Sean.
Okay.
And that's because of the time.
And again, just to reiterate, we're not trying to be prima donnas here. We're concerned about
Time.
the scheduling
Right.
with the November town meeting.
Yeah.
These things happen, and we don't want to have something happen if we can, get a positive vote at both town meeting and at a referendum.
And from a procedural standpoint, for those at home that may understand some of all of what we were talking about, is the initial, and I was incorrect when you first came to us,
Yep.
right? Because my understanding was that you had to go through town meeting before you could submit for the ballot. But that does not apply in the sense of a debt exclusion or an override instance. So you can submit for the ballot language and the date for the ballot to be held, and still go forward and plan your special town meeting, or wait until town meeting and you can say, hey, we want to do this on December 1st, and initiate that process. So one doesn't have, the ballot doesn't necessarily preclude the positive vote at a special town meeting or a town meeting. You can already get that going. We can, depending on how the vote goes, is whether or not the ballot is actually held. So, so that's just a procedural thing.
Can someone remind me, how many signatures do you need for a special town meeting? I didn't think it was that
I
high.
think it was only 200, right?
Oh, okay, so you
So-
already, that's what I thought. I didn't think
Yeah.
it was that high. So you have 650.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gonna ask the question, what are we waiting for?
750.
I don't know.
Do I hear
We're
800?
not handling that, so I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, fair enough. All right, so at this time, Mr. Andrade, you had a motion you wanted to make?
Yeah, if we could, if we could have, if we'd have the town administrator review the letter that was sent, because I didn't see it, and sign on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, petitioning the state to use any surplus or ARPA funds to increase the amount of reimbursement currently available for those affected by COVID, projects affected by COVID,
For library projects.
for library projects.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, is everybody all set with the?
Yep.
Okay, well, good. Thank you, appreciate this. You know, for what it's worth, this is exactly what we were asking.
Good.
From you guys to say, hey, this is what the difference is from an investment standpoint, because now this gives those that are looking to have an idea of what, you know, what we're gonna spend, kind of take some of the anecdotal discussion
Yeah.
off the table, given the research that was done by Ms. Everett, so thank you. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you very much for your time.